The story of Dr. Harley Sawyer is one of the most important in all of Poppy Playtime. He took innovation to places it had never been before, to places that were unethical and inhumane. Without Harley, the Bigger Bodies initiative might not have ever happened. That being said, his involvement in turning innocent children into living toys reflects a deep moral corruption within him and a willingness to cross any boundary in the name of progress. He is responsible for creating all of the terrifying toys that now haunt the abandoned Playtime Co. factory. Harley is not a misunderstood genius, but a truly evil force behind Playtime Co.'s dark legacy.
My name is Harley Sawyer. I'm called the Doctor. When I look at this company we've built, I do not feel proud. Declining profits, failed experiments, people are constantly seeing things they shouldn't. How is that anything less than complete failure on our part? It's pathetic. Now we're understaffed, safety protocols are being abandoned, workplace incidents are common. We can't avoid a lawsuit forever. We need to deal with all of these issues at once. I'm here now with a solution. The Bigger Bodies Initiative. Giant toys. We can increase our workforce and simultaneously decrease the number of lawsuits and people on our payroll if the people we have working aren't people.
Harley Sawyer is arguably one of the most intelligent humans in the world of Poppy Playtime. He created something that would change humanity forever. Well, that's if word of what he did ever gets out. The Bigger Bodies Initiative, human consciousness inside of a toy. He essentially created immortality. If your mind lived inside of a toy, you could live forever. But inside of Harley's extremely brilliant mind was a cruel and sadistic man. A man that cared nothing for humanity, but rather everything for innovation. Pushing the boundaries of what can be. Pushing the boundaries of science. Harley was narcissistic and cared for nothing other than himself and his goals. He lacked any sort of empathy or positive feeling towards others. He pioneered an era of what was essentially mass murder and suffering for innocent children. Harley Sawyer was heartless, cruel, and downright barbaric. But how does a person like this develop such traits? Well, of course, it all starts with Playtime Co.
There are no places you can hide. Not from me.
The early childhood years of Harley Sawyer still remain a mystery. However, during presumably his teen years, he would be chosen for something special. Sometime during the 1970s, Elliot Ludwig, the founder of Playtime Co., created a project that would try to solve unanswerable questions. Questions that, of course, embrace the science of the future. To do this, he needed the most intelligent kids around, ones that would grow into the smartest scientists, all while inside the walls of Playtime Co. This project was called the Young Geniuses Program. Behind closed doors, the students inside this program would conduct science experiments of the future. It's never directly said, but these experiments involve trying to place animal consciousness into Playtime Co. toys. Now, these students would be handpicked by Elliot, and one of said students picked was a young Harley Sawyer. But Harley was different. He stood out from the others. He did not care about friendships and took to his work very seriously. He had a drive unlike anything Elliot Ludwig had ever seen. Harley Sawyer was curious and fiercely determined. He was exactly what Elliot was looking for in this program. However, this sense of drive would be a cause for concern. Harley did not miss his home life, and he isolated himself from the others. So, in the words of Elliot, if a mind like this is not surrounded by kindness, yes, it can twist. And twist it did. So much so that Elliot Ludwig would ultimately remove Harley from the Young Geniuses program entirely. Despite Harley's determination and incessant need for progress, he had one glaring flaw that Elliot could no longer ignore: his lack of humility. Elliot stressed that scientific progress should always be to the benefit of humanity. Progress made simply for the sake of progress often winds up hurting more than it helps. This realization came after Harley had lashed out at Elliot. In a fit of rage, Harley had told Elliot not to be soft, that progress doesn't care for how anyone feels about it. But Elliot immediately knew Harley was wrong. So because of this lash out and how Harley had been acting, Elliot decided it was best to let him go. Perhaps this would teach Harley a lesson, to see a new perspective on why progress matters. Little did Elliot know, this would only darken Harley's perspective even more, and create an enemy. But this removal did not stop Harley from pursuing a life in science. Rather, it likely fueled his fire even more. Harley Sawyer would go on to study neuroscience and become certified by the American Board of Neurological Surgery. In other words, he studied the human nervous system and the brain. This likely means that Harley was working as a brain surgeon or something related to it. But one day, Mr. Sawyer would receive a letter in the mail from Leith Pierre, head of innovation at Playtime Co. This, obviously, took place many years after Harley was removed from the Young Geniuses program, and Elliot Ludwig had since passed away. Leith was now, more or less, running the company and took pride in continuing Elliot's work. This meant that Playtime Co. was still conducting experiments with their toys. However, it seemed they were not pushing science to where they wanted it to be, so Leith Pierre knew of the perfect person that might be able to make progress. He reached out to Harley Sawyer with the project of a lifetime. Leith had found out about Harley's time in the Young Geniuses program, which made him uniquely qualified for this offer. An offer that would set in motion the events of Playtime Co.'s eventual downfall.
What's a dozen children? 1,000. Next to this. What would they have been otherwise? Another drooling automaton out in the world, blindly accepting the offerings of better men? I gave them purpose. I made their lives matter.
Harley Sawyer would follow this letter and take to a new position at Playtime Co. He would be head of the Special Projects Division, which gained him the nickname of the Doctor. This special project was Playtime Co.'s attempt to truly push the boundaries of science, to take innovation to places it had never been before. No longer would they be using animals for their experiments. With the help of Harley Sawyer and his neuroscience background, they would begin conducting experiments using humans, putting their consciousness into Playtime Co. toys. Now, finding a person to willingly give their life would be difficult, so instead, they used the orphans that lived in play care. An orphan has no family, so no one would know if they ever went missing.
Why can't I feel anything?
Numbness is to be expected, but you'll feel better. Don't you worry now, Cassie. The feeling will pass. Just a pinch, that's all.
You see, these experiments were not as simple as falling asleep and waking up in a new body. They were gruesome and left the child feeling like they were no longer themselves. Worst of all, during the experiments, they remembered everything. They could feel their skin being opened up like flower petals. They could even feel the doctors digging around inside of them and taking things out. One child, Riley, presumably a failed kissy-missy experiment, noted feeling the doctors touch through her ribs and into the back of her spine. A snap and everywhere was red. Recovery was no easy task either. Everything hurt, nothing felt right. They couldn't separate their fingers even though they could feel them move. On top of all of this, the experiment, rather the child, would wake up in a room alone. They would scream and scream for hours, but no one was ever listening. This was the horrific reality of these special projects, and sure enough, it slowly began to work. The subjects would start to show very small amounts of life, like sitting up and blinking.
Subject appears stable. Operation clean.
Not getting much response here.
Hold.
No eye movement. Stand by.
However, most would eventually fail, until Experiment 1160, the first of this initiative, the first of the bigger bodies. Experiment 1160 would birth the start of the Bigger Bodies initiative, giant living toys that would work for Playtime Co. at no cost. This would save the company money, and Harley Sawyer would be able to continue his work. Now, Harley told the higher-ups at Playtime Co. that this Bigger Bodies initiative would be beneficial to the company because, like I said, it would save them money. And to a business, money was all that mattered. But Harley had a different agenda for this initiative. He believed that humans were flawed, walking meat suits with an immortal mind. The human body was holding the mind back. So with the Bigger Bodies initiative, this problem would be solved. He was essentially creating immortality. You would never die if your mind was inside of a toy. With the success of Experiment 1160, presumably Boxy Boo, Harley decided to atone the experiment's appetite to human flesh to deal with potential leaks. If anyone found out about the Bigger Bodies initiative, Boxy Boo would eat them. We saw this firsthand with Rowenstahl. Boxy was essentially a feral beast. While he wasn't exactly fit for work, he was a step in the right direction. Another experiment close to Boxy's number was 1163, Pianosaurus. Much like Boxy Boo, Pianosaurus displayed no typical human qualities. He was another beast. However, Pianosaurus lacked the cunningness and ideal size like Boxy. He was a rabid beast snapping at motion and ate whatever fit inside of its mouth. This was the last of its kind. No more beasts. Higher cognitive function would need to be present in all experiments moving forward. Harley was making progress. It was slow, but it was still progress. Now, Harley Sawyer was very involved in deciding what to do with the experiments, whether they were useful or not. And in one particular case, he would do something that he's never done before. An interesting orphan would come into Playcare, an orphan that intrigued Harley Sawyer with his unique way of thinking. This orphan's name was Quinn Davidson. Quinn was extremely shy and kept to himself. This would lead to him developing troublesome behaviors. Sound familiar? It was as if Harley saw a bit of himself in the boy. Quinn would be chosen for Experiment 1166, Yarnaby. So, like the other orphans, he would participate in game station tests. His first attempt was nothing special, but it seemed as if Quinn was holding himself back. So Harley decided to speak to Quinn about this. During their conversation, we see the true nature of Quinn Davidson. Quinn saw the world differently from others. He saw beauty in the unpleasant. Where you might see a pretty doll, to Quinn, something was off about it. So he would remove the head off of said doll to make it prettier. Their heads got in the way of their bodies, as he said himself. He would even swap doll heads to make his own pretty dolls. Regardless of this concerning behavior, Harley insisted Quinn was holding himself back in hopes that others would have lesser expectations of him. He tells Quinn to give it his all in his next test. He wants to see the real Quinn Davidson. So Quinn would listen to Harley and do exactly as he asked, receiving much better test scores in the game station, which were overseen directly by Harley. After their conversation, Quinn did in fact perform better on the second round of tests, excluding musical memory. But what is more interesting here is how Quinn acted after the tests. He bit the heads off toys and basically hid from staff for 15 minutes. That was the real Quinn Davidson Harley was asking for. Yes, Harley wanted to see better scores, but he also wanted to see how Quinn would really act if he was told to be himself. The boy became feral, but more importantly, he obeyed Harley. So Quinn Davidson would from then on be known as Experiment 1166, the bigger body version of Yarnaby. Yarnaby demonstrated an acute lack of higher cognitive function, meaning this experiment still was not up to par with what they were looking for. However, Yarnaby displayed an odd sense of loyalty indicative of a cat or dog. This meant it could be bent, rather molded. So Harley Sawyer decided to isolate Yarnaby. It would have no contact with anyone but Harley. By the time he would be done with it, Harley would be Yarnaby's entire world. And Harley got his wish. Yarnaby became attached to Harley. He was his pet, his guard dog if you will. He wasn't smart, but he was loyal. This made him valuable to Harley. But of course, Harley would eventually abandon Yarnaby. leaving him to sit inside of a cell for his entire life. The reason for this is unknown, but perhaps Harley just lost interest in the experiment as they made other, more intelligent ones. Regardless, Yarnaby was lost without Harley, and this is part of why Harley is so evil. He forcefully manipulated Yarnaby into only knowing Harley, so once he left him behind, Yarnaby became nothing. It shows the true cold nature of the Doctor. He never truly cared about Yarnaby. He got the experiment emotionally attached only to abandon him. Harley also called Yarnaby it. This was dehumanizing Yarnaby. Harley treated him like an object rather than the boy he once was. While there were many different experiments that Harley created, there was one in particular that was the most intriguing of them all. Experiment 1006, the prototype.
I possess.
A question.
Go ahead.
Do you feel anything?
This question referred to what exactly?
You stick us, beat us, tear at flesh.
Do you feel it? But there's a secret inside you, 1006. Valuable beyond all measure. I cut and prod and burn at it, and I get closer with each session. So speak, or don't. Fight, or give in. Regardless, I learn something new about you every day. It excites me.
Thank you.
You thank me?
Absolutely.
I learn something new about you every day.
This was Harley's main interest. He insisted there was a secret inside of the prototype valuable beyond all measure. And with each poke and prod, they get closer and closer to finding it. Obviously, this angered the prototype, asking Harley if they felt anything after experimenting on them. This was a moral question, and it showed the mindset behind the prototype. He wanted revenge, and this was the start of these two characters' relationship. Over time, Harley would create the higher cognitive bigger bodies he had been wanting. This came from experiments like Huggy Wuggy. He was considered the most optimal outcome due to his intelligence and obedience. Because of this, his job was to act as security for Playtime Co. Huggy's intelligence would then be rivaled by Catnap, another almost perfect experiment. Catnap's job was to look over the orphans at Playcare and help them sleep using the red smoke he emits. Of course, there were many other successful experiments turned employees. One in particular was the most ambitious yet. Experiment 1322, Doughy the Dome Man. 3 human consciousness in 1 bigger body. A monumental feat for Harley. He was doing things no man had ever done. 3 minds in 1 body. Each would fight to come out. It was unethical and downright evil. But to Harley, that was 3 jobs for 1 bigger body. All that being said, eventually karma would catch up to him. Behind all of Harley's achievements, trouble would slowly arise. The Bigger Bodies Initiative was now losing the company money, leaving Harley to blame. These experiments were expensive. He began warning the colleagues of one bad day, how one moment of immense anger could ruin everything. He was being irritable. Harley would slowly gain a bad reputation due to his involvement in several incidents that put the Bigger Bodies Initiative at risk. Harley was jeopardizing his own work because of his sheer desire for success. The last straw was the theater incident.
Got another one over here.
Jeez. Hard to imagine how the company will duck all this under the rock.
Not our problem. 3 here.
How many is that now?
58. So far.
Another one over here.
59.
Where's that investigator? Campbell, Lockhart? Whatever his name is.
Poking around somewhere? Don't know. You ask me? The culprit's obvious. Just needs to be spelled out plain and clear for the bigwigs.
You think?
Yeah. Rotten eggs come from rotten chickens, you know? Can't get more rotten a chicken than him.
I don't know. Just seems too careless that a guy so smart wouldn't cover his ass. I mean, if the investigator finds evidence of this, then his fault.
Hope Boxy's still hungry.
Got another
60.
Right. And are we just stopping the experiments back where they came from? Acting like all this didn't happen. All over the ice? Because I guarantee it won't be so easy to toss a new coat of paint over 60 visitors dead. Or the dozen research extraction specialists who got swimming in the bellies of those things.
I'm sure that's taken care of already. But I hear there's plans. Something big. Somewhere to put them. With any luck, that means stuff like this, and people like him, will be a thing of the past.
There's more over here.
An incident where Playtime Co. staff and even visitors were killed, all because of Harley Sawyer. After confirming that Harley was responsible, Stella Graber, Eddie Ritterman, and Leith Pierre met up together to discuss what to do about Harley's negligence.
This recklessness has to stop. The doctor has no regard for the safety of this facility or its staff.
Or the children in play care. I've tried to set boundaries with him. He doesn't listen to me.
The guy's gotta go, Leith. This wouldn't be the first time we made someone disappear.
We can't kill him, Eddie.
Why not?
Because, like it or not, we need him.
Sawyer can't keep leading this project.
So we just ask him to step down? Take a demotion?
No, but...
I'm not disagreeing. Huggy Loose in the Woods, that business with Catnap, the whole Stoll thing.
And half a dozen other incidents.
Right. And all of that pales in comparison to the theater incident.
I don't even want to talk about that.
So, we can't kill the son of a bitch, but we need to knock him out of the equation. What do we do?
There is one thing I can think of.
In this meeting, the idea of killing him was put forward, as well as simply demoting him, but neither could work as they still needed his intellect and he wouldn't take to the loss of his position kindly. Out of options, Leith Pierre had something else in mind.
Let me tell you how this is gonna go, Sawyer. From now on, you're here to give the lab boys answers when they need them, and carry out procedures when and how we tell you to. That's it. You'll be an open book to us whenever we want. So fight, or give in, or whatever. Because either way, we own the infrastructure you're wired into.
You're tied for this, Leith.
They decided to subject Harley to his own experiment, a taste of his own medicine. They took Harley and uploaded his consciousness to Playtime Co.'s database using his brain and organs. Upon gaining consciousness, Harley was confused, but quickly realized the situation he was in, calling the higher-ups backstabbing traitors. Harley had become a subject to his own procedure. He was reduced to organs, his lungs, liver, and brain, which were stored and kept alive in vital system centers scattered around the facility. In his tape, he yells at Dr. White for doing this to him, when suddenly Leith Pierre chimes in and tells Harley that he gave the order for this to happen, and then explains what's going to happen next. From then on, Harley would be used to give answers to the lab scientists and help them whenever they needed it. That's it. He would be an open book for them whenever they want it. Leith continued by telling Harley to fight or give in. It doesn't really matter because either way, they own the very infrastructure he was wired to, meaning Dr. Sawyer will now be a servant to Playtime Co. for the rest of his life. He was from then on out a digital entity. Like I said, karma had caught up to Harley. He was now stuck inside of Playtime Co. forever. Time continued as the prototype would convince most of the other experiments to rebel against the staff on a planned day. A day where toys would take back their freedom and stop the horrific experiments. This event was called the Hour of Joy. Both the guilty and innocent were killed, a complete massacre of all humans inside the factory. While this was happening, Harley was impressed by its execution, and leveraged the event to gain control over the prison by acquiring an Omni-Hand from the warden. With this newfound power, not only did Harley let out all of the experiments from the prison, but he would have full access to everything inside the facility. The Omni-Hand was like a master key. Now, the prototype, despite the torture that Harley had caused him, decided to keep Harley alive for his knowledge, as he required it to crack some kind of secret. This parallels Leith's plan for Harley perfectly, keeping him alive to use his brain. At the time of making this video, this secret is still a mystery.
Your suggestions?
To produce the results I'm after. Have I made an error in allowing your survival? Of course not. We just need more time to perfect the time. Time is precisely what we do not have. Then I suggest you find some more. That will give me labs access. At least with the two of us.
That is out of the question.
You will support. Fine. But you have no staff, virtually no test subjects. It's hardly ideal conditions. Even when this place was fully operational, we were beating our heads against this. You can't expect to do it on your own so quickly. The situation necessitates it be done quickly. I'm just giving you the facts. And the fact is, we need more time, or this isn't going to work. I can only be reactive up here. Then of what use are you? You know I'm still your best shot at cracking that secret. If I weren't, you would have already killed me. A sound observation. Yes, you have made yourself useful. Provide me more options. I will try again. Of course.
But
If you are stalling, or worse, remember,
your usefulness
is the only reason you were not stripped for meat and spare parts.
So, like I mentioned before, the two would form a relationship. The prototype kept Harley alive only because he needed his help. In 2002, Harley detected activity from a computer terminal containing information about his past. He hacked the Playtime IT email account, which had been helping to unlock terminal permissions, and eventually gained full access to it. After later hacking the Digital Playtime Co. account who had been assisting the group, he warned them to stay out of the terminal, only for them to discover a maze which contained his digital thoughts. And finally, Harley terminated the terminal's connection, leaving behind one simple message: you were warned. So in 2005, the player returns to the factory and meets the Doctor. Upon entering, unbeknownst to them, the player is being watched. Every move, every door opened, and every encounter the Doctor is observing, and watches them descend. As the player ventures deeper and deeper into the factory, they first learn of Harley as he presents himself over a TV in a prison cell. He mentions feeling something squirming its way beneath his skin, an invasive foreign little germ after all this time. As we know, the first few layers of the factory were just scratching the surface of the entire facility, meaning we were just scratching the surface of Harley himself. The deeper we go, the deeper we enter inside the mind of Harley Sawyer. This is his turf. There are no places to hide. So he sends us to the prison to see how we fare, a little game as he said himself. As we navigate through the dark remnants of the prison cells, Harley points out how lost and disoriented we look. Heavy breathing is indicative of fear, so Harley decides to test our response to fear by sending out a horde of mini nightmare critters. This tells us that Harley has been watching our every move, as he's been watching us since chapter 1. Now, when we enter one of the containment zone rooms, Harley mentions he never thought he'd see another like us, a human, certainly not an employee. This is interesting because he doesn't say what type of employee we are, as this still remains a mystery, but he says something makes us different. He's not sure what, however, we were able to take out the other experiments. So Harley decides to try something different himself and brings out Yarnaby. As we know, Yarnaby acts as Harley's guard dog. Since we are getting closer, he sends out Yarnaby to help protect him. Harley also mentions he will be taking notes. I don't think this was just a joke. I think he will actually be taking notes on how Yarnaby performs, taking notes on how effective Yarnaby really is. That being said, I believe Harley Sawyer had been actively studying how each experiment performed when attacking us. After all, they are his creations, and he seemed fascinated from watching Huggy chase us in Chapter 1.
Our intruder stirred one of the factory's security measures, and he performed exactly as he was designed.
After our final encounter with Yarnaby, Harley speaks to us again, saying it's just as he expected, meaning Harley expected us to get past Yarnaby. He expected us to kill him. It makes you wonder if it had been Harley's plan all along to get rid of Yarnaby, considering he abandoned him all those years ago. Either way, Harley mentions we are every bit of what the prototype fears. We are strong, as no experiment has been able to stop us. But Harley can't remember seeing our face before and wonders why we came back. Was there someone we loved here, someone we lost, or was it the pain of not knowing what happened? It's been a theory that the player had something to do with the Bigger Bodies initiative. After all, in Chapter 3, it's heavily implied that we returned because of guilt. We feel guilty for being a part of the experiments, so now we have returned to help what's left in hopes to clear our conscience. But Harley says he doesn't remember seeing us. You would think he remembers every employee that was part of this initiative, so I'm not entirely sure why he doesn't, but it's an interesting detail to point out. Again, at the time of making this video, the player is still a mystery. Now, in order to stop Harley, we are tasked with destroying the organs that are keeping him alive. The first is inside the morgue. Here, in an attempt to stop us, Harley pleads to us that Poppy is the bad person, not him. He stressed how she sold us her story, then reveals she knew about the hour of joy. She knew it was going to happen. Harley continues how Poppy has just been stringing us along, betrayed us, and has only told us what she wanted us to know. All she wants is violence. Once the experiments were free, instead of leaving, they created hell. This is Harley trying to convince us that Poppy is the real villain, not him. In other words, like I said before, him being misunderstood. But obviously, this isn't true. So we destroy his lungs. Later on, he continues by suggesting Poppy doesn't actually care about us. She would sacrifice us in an instant if she believed it meant getting what she wanted. The only difference between her and Harley is what he fights for gains humanity something. This line from Harley is the most important. You see, Harley knows that Poppy's plan to stop the prototype is going to kill the remaining experiments, his creations. Harley doesn't want his work to be for nothing. If Poppy destroys everything, the Bigger Bodies initiative will be gone. This is what he meant by saying he fights for gaining humanity something. Harley thinks the Bigger Bodies initiative will save humanity by giving humans immortality. This is why Harley had been trying to convince us that Poppy is the real villain. He doesn't want her to destroy everything he built. So the point of this is that Harley does not care about anything but his work. He does not actually care about the experiments or how they feel, reminding us of his true narcissistic intentions. Now, Harley also mentions something called the Golden Path.
It was going to be mine. It was all going to be mine. My discovery, my recognition. I was the one who paved the Golden Path.
This is Harley's term for what he's doing with the Bigger Bodies initiative. The Golden Path is immortality, a path to riches, as what's the most valuable thing in life? Time. But since he was turned into an experiment, this recognition would be taken away from him. Now he would never be known as the man who created immortality, and that was his biggest fear. This was part of what fueled his anger. After destroying the second organ, we head to where the doctor's brain resides, the last piece to the puzzle. It's hooked up to a different machine than the others. This is because it's his brain, the most important organ. However, he takes control of a robot and throws us down underneath. This room is filled with countless other robots that Harley is able to control. Now, at some point after the Hour of Joy, Harley was somehow able to build these robots. Originally, he was just the digital entity, a program. Like I said before, he lived inside of Playtime Co.'s database and had no physical touch to the real world, until he likely convinced the prototype to build him a robot for him to inhabit, meaning his program could take control of it, allowing him to physically interact with the real world again. This likely allowed him to build many more of these robots, which is what we see here. His program can somehow control each one individually, but how these robots were made is just my assumption, as there are no details about how he made them at all. Now, with each computer powered, we get closer and closer to overloading his brain. Once all of them are on, we head back upstairs and do just that. We overload Harley's brain and destroy it. Harley's last words are, "You saved no one." This was his last attempt to try and convince us that Poppy's plan will get everyone killed, and more specifically that his work will have been for nothing. Immortality will no longer be an option. That is what he meant by no one was saved. This is where the Dr. Harley Sawyer's story comes to an end. Harley Sawyer's story slowly unravels the truly horrific nature of the character in a way that's not directly presented in the game. He is an evil character that cares for nothing more than himself and his goals, and would stop at nothing to achieve them. We see this through his time in the Young Geniuses program and his unethical behavior as Playtime Co.'s head scientist. His role in the transformation of innocent children into monstrous toys reveal a dark disregard for human life, all in the pursuit of innovation. Harley was a key figure behind the sinister legacy of Playtime Co. His willingness to sacrifice others for the sake of progress paints him not just as an evil mad scientist, but as the true villain of Poppy Playtime.
Now what's this? After all this time? Ah, but I see. You. There are no places you can hide. Not from me.